to Amitabh Kant, who's of course been driving lots of the policies of the government at NITI Aayog and elsewhere. Amitabh, we were just having a discussion out here on whether we are seeing one of those turning points in Indian polity where, yes, this may be one step, but in a sense the Congress party has said that we also think this is a good idea. Are we going to remember January, February 2019 as the start of a process where we start dismantling the entire subsidy regime of the past and we start moving more to direct cash transfers to various people who need cash transfers? And the Kisan Yojana is one step in that direction. Presumably, if the opposition comes back to power, they'd also want to proceed on the same track.
So, Vikram, I think this is the most notable feature of this budget. It marks a very major structural reform of moving away from farm loan waivers, which were distorting credit history, which were distorting markets, towards direct benefit transfer to farmers. And this would enable liquidity to be provided to the farmers. More than that, I think when you add it up with the measures taken in both the dairy and the fisheries sector, because allied activities in agriculture are very critical, this should ensure that farmers' income are able to rise very substantially in the days to come. But more important than that is that the central government has done its bit. Agriculture is essentially a state subject, and state governments must play a very critical role now in building markets, in providing cold storages, backward-forward linkages, and ensuring that farmers are able to get a good return for their produce. This is critical because, the Essential Commodities Act and, the price controls on many of these areas are very, very retarding to the agriculture sectors and to the actual producers in the agriculture sector. So technology, markets, seed, fertilizer are very critical, and cold storages and the backward linkages.
So, Mr. Kant, implicit in that, is there also a slight admission, and perhaps this is an admission that all of us should take as a nation, that in some way or the other we have failed the farmers? The fact that there is farmers' distress, the fact that the terms of trade have moved against farmers, the fact that, at times exports are permitted, at times exports are not permitted, the fact that they can't repay their loans, the fact that there is an agrarian crisis, some way or the other the farmers have been failed, and to that extent the government of the day has to take the responsibility for that as well.
Well, the government has done enormously, I mean, in terms of ENAM, in terms of soil health cards, in terms of the Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana. A lot has been done. In some states, we've had excessive degree of production. The critical thing, as I said, about agriculture is that markets must perform. And more than that, in a situation of agrarian distress like this, the good thing is that instead of indulging in populism, the government thought through and ensured that we are able to provide direct benefit transfer straight into the bank account of farmers. One issue that has been raised is about tenant farmers. And I would like to say that there are about close to 14.21% tenant farmers. If you look at their record, almost about 12% of the tenant farmers are those who, 12.5% are those who actually own land as well. So even tenant farmers will get, almost 85% of the tenant farmers will also get covered under this scheme.
So if I can look, there's a lot of vision 2030 that we did here in the budget, and that was an interesting part of the whole thing. But if you had to look at the vision 4 years, 5 years, 7 years later, whichever government is in power, would you think that one of the visions that we should move towards will be a situation that as and when distortions are to be fixed, whether it's to farmers, whether it's to the unemployed, whether it's to the rural poor or the urban poor, increasingly we will not have a system where we're having fertilizer subsidy or electricity subsidy or even food subsidy. It will all be, because we do have Aadhaar now, we do have bank accounts, it will all be done through direct payments, and therefore perhaps ensuring more and more money actually goes through the pipe and reaches the intended recipient?
Yeah, so Vikram, one great credit you have to give to this government is that it has accelerated the process of Jam Trinity, that every single individual in India has a mobile, he has a bank account, and he has his biometric, and therefore India is actually the only country in the world with the infrastructure where you can provide subsidy straight through direct benefit transfer. You need to provide income straight into the bank account rather than providing subsidies of agriculture, fertilizer subsidies and so on. So the days of subsidy must end, and we must move increasingly towards income benefits.
I think you're right that technology potentially is a big help in that. But, one of the questions, one of the words that we didn't hear much about.
This would, Vikram, the key thing in that is that this will ensure the end of all leakages in the Indian economy, and will make India a very efficient economy and ensure that the beneficiaries get amounts straight into their bank account.
Okay, now one of the words that we didn't hear at all in the budget was the J word, jobs, or U word, unemployment. And the fact that nothing specifically was said about that, and we've had this entire row over the last couple of days about the data not being released, whether it was provision or not. Is there a certain denial about possible joblessness or unemployment?
Vikram, the story of jobs is actually written all over the budget. From the first to the last para, starting from farmers, to the unorganized sector, to the MSME sector, to just about the whole story of not only jobs as they exist now, but looking at the jobs of the future. Because the budget talks about artificial intelligence, it talks about electric batteries, energy storage, it talks about renewable energy, it talks about digitization in all our villages, and therefore it looks at providing jobs across sectors, but it also looks at jobs for the future. So, the government clearly recognizes that growth has to be, the important thing is that India must grow at rapid rates. Without growth, you can't have distributive equity. With growth, you can have distributive equity. And then you need to provide jobs for that. And therefore, the story of jobs is all over this budget.
All right, fine. One last question. I did speak to the finance secretary earlier in the day, and he said that, where the resources are going to be coming from, it obviously is not going to suffice some of the schemes that have done to solve all the income problems of the farmers, but where will the resources come from? He essentially seemed to indicate that buoyancy is really what is being bet upon, that as the economy grows, there will be tax buoyancy. Is that a fair assumption, you think, or could there be a slippage, which would therefore mean whenever the full budget comes out in July, suddenly there are a whole bunch of fresh taxes?
No, Vikram, the good thing is that the government has been very financially disciplined, I must say. It has had a fiscal deficit of just about 3.4%, which to my mind is fine. But the way direct taxes have grown, the buoyancy, almost doubling, the tax base rising by almost 80%. And my view is that in the days to come, you'll see a huge buoyancy in GST as well. As it settles down, you'll see a huge growth because your tax base in GST is also grown in numbers term. So you'll have a huge tax buoyancy, but I envisage that our ambition and our hunger in India must be to grow at higher rates of 9 to 10%. There's no reason why India shouldn't be growing at 9 to 10%. And with 9 to 10% growth, you should have much higher tax buoyancy.